Experience better days with the bigger, better 4G. Hutch 4G. Now bigger and better.
Voting to elect 225 members to the 9th Parliament of the Socialist Democratic Republic of Sri Lanka commenced at 7 a.m. today. 7,452 candidates from 20 recognized political parties as well as 34 independent groups contested in 22 electoral districts during this year's polls. According to the 2019 electoral list, the total number of voters eligible to cast their votes this time around was 16,263,885. Members of the public were provided with the opportunity to cast their vote at 12,985 polling stations island-wide. With the general election being held amidst a global pandemic, voters were given the opportunity to cast their ballots today in accordance with special health guidelines. Accordingly, it was made a must for voters to wear a face mask when arriving at the polling centres, and they were also advised to maintain the mandatory social distancing regulations. For those who had been in self-quarantine at their homes for an additional 14 days following the conclusion of their quarantine processes, they were given the opportunity to cast their votes from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. today. As planned, the voting process came to a conclusion at 5 this evening.
After 10 hours of voting today, voting ended at 5 p.m. this evening, where 19 Colombo district candidates will be elected to Parliament. The national importance of this election cannot be stressed enough, because after years of political instability, the country now has a chance to elect a government with a majority that can, for the next 5 years, instill some sense of stability to this country and bring some sort of economic relief. Ballot boxes have been streaming into Royal College, Colombo, one of the main counting centres in the district, since 5 o'clock, and counting will begin at 7 a.m. tomorrow, with the first results expected to come out at 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon.
Out of the total number of 1,709,209 voters in the Colombo district, 70% turned out to cast their ballots today. The Gampaha district, which counts the highest number of voters with 1,785,964, recorded a voter turnout of 68%. The total number of voters who turned out to vote in the Kalutara district was 70% out of the 972,319 registered voters eligible to cast their votes. 1,129,100 voters in the Kandy district were eligible to vote in this year's general election, out of which 72% cast their ballots today. Out of the 407,569 members of the public eligible to cast their vote in the Mathare district, only 72% did so today. In the Novara Elia district, 75% turned out to cast their vote out of the 577,717 eligible voters. The number of voters eligible to vote in the Gaul district amounted to 867,709, and 70% of them were utilized today. Meanwhile, in the Mathare district, 71% of its voters cast their ballots today out of the 659,587 eligible voters. Out of a total of 493,192 eligible voters in the Hambantota district, 76% cast their ballots today. Hambantota is among the districts with the highest voter turnout. Meanwhile, the total number of eligible voters in the Kurunegala district amounts to 1,348,787, and of it, only 65% cast their votes today. Meanwhile, out of the total 614,370 eligible voters in the Puttalam district, the voter turnout was recorded at 64%. The Anuradhapura district recorded a voter turnout of 70% out of 693,634 eligible voters. Out of 391,119 voters in the Polonnaruwa district, 72% turned out at the polling stations today. Further, out of the total 668,166 eligible voters in the Badula district, 74% did so today. Meanwhile, the total number of voters in the Monaragala district amounted to 372,555, out of which 75% turned out at polling stations to vote. The voter turnout in the Ratnapura district was 71% out of 877,582 eligible voters. Meanwhile, out of 684,189 eligible voters in the Kegaul district, 70% of them cast their votes today. Meanwhile, in the Jaffna district, 67% of 531,848 eligible voters turned out to cast their votes today. The Wani electorate, which comprises of 3 administrative districts, has the lowest number of eligible voters. With that, 73% of its voters in the district cast their ballots today. Meanwhile, consisting of 288,868 eligible voters, the Trincomalee district recorded a voter turnout percentage of 73%. In the Batiklo district, 76% of its voters turned out at polling stations to cast votes for their preferred candidates. Meanwhile, out of the 513,979 eligible voters in the Digamandula district, 72% turned out to cast their ballots.
In the meantime, the head of state and leaders of prominent political parties also cast their vote today and revealed their expectations to media. All of them were hopeful of a positive outcome in the polls.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the First Lady cast their vote at the general election 2020 at the polling station set up at the Vivekarama temple in Pangirivatta of Mirihanam. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa cast his vote at the DA Rajapaksa College in Madamulanam. Leader of the United National Party and former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, in the meantime, exercised his franchise this morning at the polling station established at the University of Colombo.
මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ජනතාව අපිට වරමක් ලැබලා දෙයි කියලා. විතර බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවද ඔබතුමාලා? ආණ්ඩුවක් හදන්න පුළුවන් ඇති අපි තුනෙන් දෙයක් ඉල්ලන්නේ.
Leader of the Samagi Janabalawegaya, Sajith Premadasa, cast his vote at the polling station located in the Suranimala Junior School in Veeravilla. Leader of the Jathika Janabalawegaya, Anurukumara Dissanayaka, also cast his vote today at his designated polling station at the Abhay Singha Temple in Maligavatta. Given that this year's general election is worked off under the cloud of COVID-19, there had been some concern, especially on the part of the elderly, over the safety in visiting polling stations. Chairman of the Election Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, who is in his 60s, took to his designated polling station at the Lindsay Girls' School in Kolpiti with the intention of dispelling any fears senior citizens might harbour in frequenting the polling stations.
2011 පස්සේ ඡන්ද 10කෙක් හැටියට ඡන්ද පොළට ගියාද? මොකද මට ඕන වෙලා තිබුණා. අවුරුදු 65ක් වෙලත් වයස ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. ඡන්ද පොළ සුරක්ෂිතයි. බය නැතුව ඡන්ද දාන්න එන්න. ඡන්දය ඔබේ අයිතියයි. ඔබේ හඬයි. ඔබේ අනාගතයයි. ඔබේ බලයයි.
In the meantime, registered voters in the Colombo electoral district were out in force to exercise their franchise. In the Gampaha district, where most eligible voters hail in this year's general election, voters called on at the polling stations were in line with the health and safety guidelines put in place to curb the spread of the COVID-19. The candidates contesting in the general election from the Kandy district also cast their vote in their respective polling stations. Parliament entry hopefuls from the one electoral district were also at their respective polling stations to exercise their franchise. In the Trincomalee electoral district too, general election candidates were seen casting their vote. The situation in the Jaffna electoral district was no different.